My boss fired me for refusing to approve a plane's flight. 3 weeks later, that plane made an emergency landing with 147 people on board. The pilot got lucky. The plane didn't. I didn't sue my boss. I didn't threaten him. I just answered one email. By the end of that week, every plane his company owned was grounded. 300 people lost their jobs. And Blake Garrett's face was on the news. This is the story of how I destroyed a company to save lives. And why the person whose life I saved will never forgive me. If you've ever been in a situation where doing the right thing costs you everything, hit that like button and subscribe, because trust me, it gets messy and you're going to want to see how this ends. My name is Daniel Mercer. And for most of my career, my job was to make sure nothing interesting ever happened. I was head of safety compliance for a mid-sized airline, charter flights, regional routes, a mix of private and commercial operations. In aviation, boring is good. It means procedures were followed. It means everyone gets home. For 8 years, that was my reputation. Careful. Predictable. Reliable. The kind of person you forget is there, until something goes wrong. When I joined, the company was small. A handful of aircraft. Conservative growth. Then Blake Garrett became CEO. Blake was charismatic. Confident. Obsessed with expansion. New routes. Shorter turnaround times. More aircraft in the air. At first, it worked. Revenue climbed. Investors were happy. And the board stopped asking questions. It didn't begin dramatically. Maintenance logs completed digitally before inspections finished. Minor issues deferred and reclassified as non-critical. Problems labeled temporary that never got fixed. Blake called it efficiency. I called it risk. One evening, a mechanic pulled me aside. Tommy Reeves. 23 years on the job. Danny, he said quietly, I flagged the hydraulic line on N749 BC again. 3rd time this month. They're telling me to clear it. Did you clear it? I asked. He stared at the floor. I've got kids in college, I cannot afford to lose this job. I raised concerns in private meetings. Blake would lean back in his chair and smile. We can't afford to slow down over hypotheticals. Aviation isn't hypothetical, I said. One meeting, I stacked maintenance reports on his desk. These inspections weren't completed. 14 deferrals on one aircraft. He didn't look at them. Do you know how much a grounded plane costs us per day? Do you know how much a crash costs? I shot back. His smile disappeared. Are you threatening me? I'm doing my job, I said calmly. He leaned forward. Your job is to keep us compliant. Not to stop us from flying. Those aren't the same thing, I replied. He stood. Then you need to decide which one pays your salary. I left his office knowing exactly where this was heading. Everything came down to aircraft N749 BC. The same plane Tommy had flagged. The same recurring hydraulic issue. On paper, it looked compliant. In reality, it wasn't. The hydraulic line showed stress fractures. The kind that don't fail immediately. The kind that fail at 30,000 feet. When the final sign-off request landed on my desk, I didn't approve it. I wrote one sentence, this inspection cannot be cleared as completed. No speech. No accusation. 2 days later, Blake called me into his office. HR was already there. He said the company needed leaders aligned with its vision. He said my approach was no longer a fit. I was terminated effective immediately. Security took my badge. My access was revoked. I didn't argue. I just walked out. I tried to move on. Updated my resume. Stopped checking flight trackers. But moving on was harder than I expected. Sarah Williams had been my closest friend at the company. We'd worked together for 6 years, she was a senior pilot, one of the best. We'd grab coffee before her early shifts. She'd joke that I was the only person in the building who actually cared if she made it home. I kept expecting her to call. She didn't. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. Daniel? It's Tommy. His voice was shaking. They grounded 749 yesterday. Emergency landing in Phoenix. Hydraulic system problem. My chest went cold. Anyone hurt? No. Sarah got it down. Silence. Sarah Williams? I said. Yeah. Hydraulics lost pressure on final approach. Controls went stiff. She had to bring it in manually. My stomach dropped. Is she? She's fine, Tommy said. Shaken up, but fine. Passengers are calling her a hero. He paused. They're still calling it unforeseeable. It wasn't, I said. They've got other planes with the same issue, he added. And they're still flying. Then he hung up. That night, an email arrived. Subject, Maintenance Verification Request. It was from the Civil Aviation Authority. Routine. Procedural. They needed confirmation on several inspections. My name was listed as the last registered safety officer. They weren't asking for opinions. Just confirmation. If I said yes, the process moved on. If I said nothing, my name stayed attached. I stared at the screen. This wasn't whistleblowing. This was answering a question. But I knew what would happen next. The audits. The groundings. Blake would know it was me. I thought about Tommy. About Sarah fighting stiff controls on final approach. About the passengers who survived. About the other planes still flying with the same defect, and the passengers who had no idea they were boarding time bombs. My hand was shaking. Then I replied. Honestly. One paragraph. I'm unable to confirm these inspections. Several were signed off before completion. Aircraft N749BC's hydraulic system was flagged multiple times and deferred without resolution. No emotion. No blame. I hit send. I closed my laptop. And I went to bed. The next morning, my phone was full of missed calls. The authority issued a temporary grounding order, standard during verification. Insurance companies were notified. Leasing firms followed. By noon, every aircraft in Blake's fleet was grounded. I didn't turn on the news. But I saw it anyway. Regional airline grounded after safety violations. They interviewed passengers at the airport. One woman stood in front of the departure board, arms crossed. "I've got a wedding to get to," she said. "This is ridiculous." I watched her complain about the inconvenience. And wondered if she knew that the alternative wasn't a delayed flight. It was her name on a passenger manifest in a very different kind of news story. The audits moved fast. Within 48 hours, the board placed Blake on leave. Over the next 2 weeks, the full scope emerged. Deferred issues resurfaced. Patterns that implicated the entire aircraft fleet. This wasn't one aircraft. It was a system. Investors pulled funding. The company had 30 days of operating capital. Without aircraft generating revenue, it had nothing. 3 weeks after my email, 1 week before the bankruptcy filing, my phone rang. "Blake, did you do this?" I could hear an echo. Like he was in an empty room. "I answered a question," I said. "You answered it because you wanted to burn me." "I answered it because it was the truth." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Danny? I actually care about the people who work here. You care about being right. By putting them in unsafe, I started. By keeping them employed." His voice cracked, then continued. "Tommy's daughter is going to have to drop out of college. There's a woman in crew scheduling, Maria. Single mom, 3 kids. She's got 2 weeks of savings and 3 mouths to feed. You've probably never even spoken to her. You're saving people from a theoretical disaster by creating a real one." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "You could have worked with me," he said quietly. "We could have phased the repairs. Managed the rollout. Kept people working. But you needed to be the hero more than you needed to be useful. That plane was going to," I tried again. "That plane flew for 6 months without incident," he shouted. "Sarah flew it dozens of times. And you want to tell me it was about to fall out of the sky the next day? You don't know that. Nobody knows that." Silence hung between us. "The company's done," he said flatly. "We're filing for bankruptcy next week. I hope you sleep well, knowing you're right." The call ended. I sat there for 20 minutes. Staring at my phone. He wasn't entirely wrong. 3 weeks later, Sarah called. "Danny, I need to talk to you." Her voice was flat. "Wrong. I've been flying for 15 years, she said. "I've got a mortgage. My daughter's in her 2nd year at UCLA. Do you know what happens to pilots when their company folds?" I tried to answer, "Sarah," then she cut me. "We don't just find another job, Danny. The industry's consolidated. Our fleet's grounded. We're damaged goods." I started again. The hydraulics on 749 were failing. "You could have." "I landed that plane," she cut me off. "I read the report," she said, quieter now. "I know you flagged it. I know you were right." I didn't know what to say. "You saved my life," she said. I exhaled. Finally, she understood. "And I hate you for it." Everything went cold. "Sarah. Because you didn't just save my life, Danny. You destroyed 300 others. And I have to live knowing I'm the reason you did it." "That's not." "Isn't it?" she said. "You saw my name on that flight log. You knew I'd been flying that plane. And you made sure the whole thing came down." "I didn't do it because I defended you," she said. "When Blake wanted to fire you last year, I told him you were just being careful. That we needed someone like you." My stomach dropped. "I didn't know that." "Of course you didn't. Because you were so busy being right that you never asked what it would cost the rest of us." The line went dead. We haven't spoken since. 6 weeks after my email, the company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Liquidation. Routes were sold to competitors at pennies on the dollar. The fleet went to auction. 300 people lost their jobs in a single day, mechanics who'd worked there for decades, pilots with spotless records, schedulers who knew every route by heart. The board fired Blake before the bankruptcy was finalized. A month after the company died, the lead investigator called. "Mr. Mercer, I wanted to let you know, we finished the analysis on N749 BC. And? The hydraulic line showed a 40% cross-sectional fracture. Progressive fatigue failure. During the Phoenix flight, the system degraded enough to cause control difficulties, but it hadn't fully ruptured." He paused. "Captain Williams experienced significant pressure loss. She compensated well, textbook flying. But if she'd needed to make any aggressive maneuvers." "What do you mean?" "Weather. Traffic avoidance. Go around. Any situation requiring full hydraulic pressure. The line was barely holding. Under stress, it would have failed completely." My chest went tight. "What's your assessment?" "She got lucky with conditions," he said carefully. "Clear weather. Straight-in approach. No complications. But continued operation was unsafe." He paused again. "It's difficult to say exactly when complete failure would have occurred. Could have been the next flight. Could have been 20 flights from now, depending on conditions. These things don't follow a predictable timeline. But it would have failed. Eventually, yes. Whether that's next Tuesday or next month, we can't say. But I can tell you this, if it had ruptured completely at altitude, during turbulence, with a less experienced pilot?" He didn't finish. "Some of my colleagues think it might have lasted another month under ideal conditions. Others think if Captain Williams had encountered weather or needed a go-around that day, we'd be looking at a very different outcome. So we don't know." "No," he said. "We don't. But I can tell you the risk was unacceptable." I sat there after he hung up. 147 people. Maybe. Sarah landed with degraded hydraulics and made it look easy. But if the weather had been worse? If she'd needed to climb? If the line had been under full stress? 300 people who lost their jobs. Definitely. The investigator couldn't tell me if those passengers would have died. But I know exactly who lost their jobs because of me. Federal investigators opened a criminal case. Falsification of maintenance records. Reckless endangerment. 8 months later, Blake took a plea deal. 2 years probation. $250,000 in fines. Banned from holding any executive position in aviation for life. Tommy found work at a cargo operation 2 states over. Took a pay cut. His daughter transferred to community college. Maria's LinkedIn said she was working loss prevention at Target. Sarah got hired by a major carrier. She's based in Seattle now. I saw her name on a crew roster once when I was booking a flight. I chose a different airline. 6 months after everything fell apart, I started a new role. Different company. Same responsibility. My first week, a supervisor tried to rush a sign-off. "It's minor," he said. "We'll circle back." "No," I said. "We won't." He stared at me. Then he fixed it. The plane didn't fly until it was safe. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. A screenshot. A local news article. Former aviation executive starts over, Blake Garrett on second chances. The photo showed Blake standing in front of a used car dealership, smiling for the camera. Older. Tired. But standing. The article said he was a salesman now. No message with the photo. Just the screenshot? I deleted it. Then I looked him up. The criminal case had closed. The fines were paid. He was rebuilding. Blake had a second chance. Tommy's daughter was in community college. Maria was catching shoplifters. Sarah wouldn't return my calls. I'd been right about the hydraulics. Blake took a plea deal and got a career change. The people who actually did the work paid the price. He's rebuilding his life. They're starting over. Sometimes I think about that email. How small it was. How ordinary. 1 paragraph. Then I remember? Planes don't fall because someone tells the truth. They fall when everyone else stays quiet. But sometimes, maybe, planes don't fall at all. And people lose everything anyway. I might have saved 147 lives including Sarah's. Yet, she'll never forgive me for it. Why would she? When I destroyed 300 livelihoods. The people I might have saved will never know my name. Yet, the person whose life I saved won't return my calls. I can live with what happened next. But I'll never know if I saved lives or just destroyed them differently. And I'll never know if the person I can't forgive is Blake. Or myself. END.